Hello and welcome back to Ray's Gaming videos and more Monster Hunter Wilds, because we now have a 5th trailer alongside a showcase to do with that trailer and some new information about, open beta, as I'm sure you've heard. Yeah, we're not doing a demo, we're doing an open beta, and maybe a demo later, to be fair. So I've got information about that and everything we saw in the trailer, all the extra details, things that have come out around the community and realizations. So lots to talk about. Let's get into it. To begin with, let's start with trailer 5 and the details of that. So we begin in our new locale, Locale 3, the Oil Well Basin. Here's the official description of our new locale. A volcanic region where oil wells and raging fires burn, home to unique creatures that have adapted though to its harsh environment. Before we really get into that, there is a new tribe here that's kind of the center of the story. This is Azuz and their home centered around the Everforge. They're basically skilled craftsmen who live around this forge, so I imagine this forge and the area around it, this village built up around it, is going to be our main village for this locale. During the trailer, they light up the Everforge for a mysterious reason, to beckon the fire spring. This is what turns the region from its cold, fallow period to its time of inclemency, and that time must be the fire spring, as we'll talk about. Perhaps this tribe then is able to intentionally change the period to suit them better using the forge, which could be a unique mechanic for this period, as we'll talk about as well. The problem in the story here is that this backfires. It seems to overheat, overcharging beyond their plan, and then draws the attention of the apex predator of this region, which we'll also get to. So let's slow down, walk it through the main trailer as we go. First gameplay shots show us moving through the terrain using the seikret as we've seen before. We get a glimpse of this oil lake bubbling in the background with a new small monster, potentially two. There's these strange looking lizard types. They're actually being attacked by another small monster, a new one, a strange raptor that has this huge rock-like head that it tries to slam down like a club onto the lizards. So a couple of interesting things there. We don't know the name of either of them, but I'm sure it will be revealed. Other life exists here though. As we progress through the cave, we see this swarm of bats passing above. Following this, we have some kind of endemic life interaction. The hunter, while passing by, grabs this thing off the wall using the grapple hook, and then drinks its substance for an effect, a kind of buff that makes the hunter glow white for a period after. So we assume that's a kind of buff, a temporary thing. Maybe it's functionally comparable to something like a cool drink for this region. Or maybe just a buff that helps deal with the negatives of the oil, something like that. Because following this, we do see this huge shot of the oil well spewing out while the hunter is dragging themselves through this knee-high oil. This seems like a real issue if the oil is going to be hard to pass through and certainly hard to fight within. Before we progress to the big monster reveal though, I want you to look at these screenshots or images of this region. You can see the stark grey of this region, then the heated up fire as it changes to that time of inclemency, the fire spring. But importantly, we have this comparison shot of that same area we were just looking at, where the hunter was dragging themselves through the thick oil. During the time of fallow, we assume, this is when it's all super oily. And then by comparison, you can see the same area in a time of plenty. This is when, after the fire spring, everything has burned out. And what's interesting about this is how it's kind of corroded. It almost looks like it's rusted. It's very coppery. Not necessarily feeling like a time of plenty and beautiful like we saw in the first locales. So how this affects the monsters and the region overall, I am interested to see. So back to the trailer. A monster is revealed, and this is Rompopolo, a new brute wyvern, which seems to finally reveal the freaky purple outfit and weapon shown in the hammer trailer you'd certainly imagine. If we look back at that, you can see there's a beak in the style of a plague doctor, the mask with the red eyes, the hammer itself has the same intense beak, there's syringes across the armor, exposed organs on the weapon, a very living feel to it. When we look back at our new monster of Rompopolo, we see that same purple, the same glowing red eyes for the mask. It is definitely that armor set. And while we have little information about these things via the Monster Hunter official webpage, there is something from the Twitter page. They tell us this: watch your step when facing this monster, lest you fall foul of its ability to inject gas from the tip of its tail into the surrounding oil sill for explosive results. So let's get into the mechanics that it shows us. Mechanically, in its introduction, you can see that it begins to fill up these sacs that are on the side of its head, down its neck, down the spine, and to the tail. These are being filled up likely by the oil, providing it with the new abilities that we probably want to disable by breaking these parts. In its opening attack, it's pouring out this purple or blue effect from its mouth, or even maybe the tongue. but then it rams that tail into the ground just as it was described by the Twitter description, injecting gas into the ground into the surrounding oil sill. And as shown, oil explosions begin around its location. Interrupting that or fully avoiding it seems a good idea, so I reckon breaking the tail could be a priority. But suddenly in our next scene, Rompopolo is leapt upon, grabbed and squeezed, breaking its back in theory, but actually you see it's emptying out those sacs. This new monster is another new one, Ajarakan, a new fanged beast with flame-like protrusions across its back. There's a couple of monsters that have familiar vibes. There's a lot of Rajang kind of renders being compared. It is very comparable to that, but I think it's more of an Eastern design or version of that kind of monster. In that first clip, we see that Ajarakan shows up seemingly in the time of fallow, but obviously is strongest in its own period of inclemency during the fire spring. In any case, this first interaction, we see that Ajarakan wins the turf war, seemingly knowing very well how to deal with Rompopolo. So in the following fire scene, Ajarakan changes physically. In this time of inclemency, he's much more on fire. You can really see the pinkish red that he has, but then he literally sets himself alight, glowing. The back now looks like a still flame. We can see how he uses the terrain to move around and hang off stuff, probably jump down and slam on you. Maybe when he lights himself up, that's via enrage. And we do see this incredible clash, but not much of a look at him right now. Via the website, you'd normally learn a lot more about monsters, but they seemingly are leaking that information out slowly. We do hear later though in the showcase that these guys are most active during the fire spring, and there are a lot of comparisons for this monster for Vol'jang from Frontier, since it's a similar concept, a fire-based fanged beast. And now we have the official description for this monster, described as a fiery and agile fanged beast that can actually ignite the shell on its back through friction, taking the heat of the battle to the next level of intensity. So that kind of flame on its back is actually a physical shell that it's just kind of igniting. As we continue through the trailer though, we do get more glimpses of these monsters, like 2 Ajarakans smacking each other, or one throwing a fiery rock at us. Or there's this Rompopolo that's caught in a new environmental trap. What's really cool about this one is it's a man-made trap, likely by that tribe for the Forge. Use a grapple hook at range to activate it, and that forces out this physical device to slam out from below, perfect for knocking a monster down. There's this clip of a very cool looking weapon. This appears to be a lance with a giant syringe as the lance. We're thinking this is the Rompopolo weapon revealed for a lance, considering the big plague mask style shield that it has too. The attack used here though does appear to be the lance mount finisher. We have seen that before from various gameplays with the lance. But next then is that cinematic scene I mentioned with the apex predator being drawn by the overheating Everforge. This is the Black Flame, which suggests to me then the real name is not known. At least not yet. It seems similar to the white wraith title people used to refer to arkveld. In any case, that is the new apex predator of this locale, and we have never seen something so unique. It would appear to be inspired by an octopus that's kind of covered or made from this oil, with all these different tentacles around the center. There are a couple of comparisons we could make to other monsters, which I'll mention shortly, but it still feels very unique. In the wide shot showing its fury, it actually shows up with 2 things in its front 2 tentacles. Those appear to be 2 Ajarakans that are trapped and flailing and trying to escape, showing the power and relevance of this apex. Getting a good look at this one's hard, but it would appear that there are 6 main tentacles around it, so 3 on either side, alongside the 2 kind of floppy mouth appendages that are hiding its face, with the more in between. Then above that are these 2 giant blue glowing eyes. It seems to light itself completely on fire though, and it puts that fire to work, spewing it out in a breath attack right into the hunter. What's interesting is how it turns its body and opens a hole on the side of its head to fire that, kind of like the back of a bulbous head of an octopus. It's using that area to maybe hold the oil and generate the fire. So when we have this incredible shot of a grab attack, you can see that it grabs the hunter, turns its head, opens that hole, and begins to spew out the fire. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a type for this thing yet either. Could this be considered an elder dragon, or is it something new? To compare it to other monsters of the past then, like I said, 2 come to mind. Firstly, we have Yamasukami, a giant monster, a kind of floating mountain that is officially elder dragon. With its tentacle-style appendages that hang down, it has a comparable feel, but is indeed very different. But yeah, that was an elder dragon. Meanwhile, you have another great comparison to think about, the Nakakos, that have very similar, multiple appendages, tentacle-like in feel. Officially, that was a corpse dragon, classified again though, as an elder dragon. So, the only things we can compare it to were elder dragons. We know that there's not going to be a focus seemingly on elder dragons in Wilds based on some interviews, but you know, this could be our first one, or maybe just a unique new monster type. But that's the main spots of the trailer. The showcase did continue with another big reveal though. Like I said, I figure you know. We have an open beta coming instead of a demo. That means we'll get to play Wilds almost immediately, but for a very limited time. Here's the info. There are 2 that are running. One that is exclusive for PlayStation 5 Plus members. This will go from October 29th from 3 a.m. GMT to October 31st, 3 a.m. GMT. So that's the 29th, the 30th, and then not really the 31st because it ends at 3 a.m. So 2 days. Then you have the proper one, the open beta, and that's available for PlayStation 5, Xbox, and Steam players. This will run from November 1st, 3 a.m. GMT to November 4th, 3 a.m. GMT. This is indeed a day gap then between the PlayStation 5 Plus and main open beta. So in total, the whole thing lasts roughly 5 days of actual playtime, with PlayStation 5 Plus members gaining 2 days with a day break between the main open beta that lasts 3 full days. In that open beta, you have the character creator in full, which you can use to bring to the full launch of the game. The story trial quest, which, having played it myself at the Gamescom event, is very short and will be very easy, will end very quickly. And then there's going to be a doshaguma hunt, which, you know, very much sounds like the same thing I played at Gamescom, the same demo that's been running across all the different events we've been seeing. Now, they did say there's going to be some restrictions on the wudwuds playing Locale during it. We don't know the exact meaning of that, but the wording was this: although the scope will be limited, we hope you enjoy the ecological expanse of the wudwud plains. So whatever it is, it should mean you're able to explore a lot of the first locale. And in that demo, in the version that we're talking about, we were able to fight doshaguma and its pack, but also chatacabra, balahara, and even wraith. So I expect we're going to have similar in our open beta without, say, quematrice, not in that locale though. That's possible maybe in the full game. So at very least, I imagine there'll be 4 monsters, including wraith, for you to fight. Something we did get that's new though when we're looking at this section was a proper look at the handler quest counter. Here we can change our settings, go for optional quests, choose lobby member quests, link member quests, and SOS flare quests too. Under settings, you can change the multiplayer options, and we see that you can change the max members possible in our quests from up to 4 to down to 1. But you can also choose to allow other players and support hunters to join you, or have just one of those. So if you don't want any support hunters in your hunt, or no players and just support hunters when you maybe use an SOS flare, that's how you set that. Otherwise, it does have familiar features like your recruitment comment, the passcode settings, but now we can also choose what platforms are allowed to join us, so limiting your crossplay choices. In the follow-up to that, the voiceover did say that the palico will join us for the hunts, basically no matter what, which is an interesting change. So you can see here that every hunter in the next shot has their own palico standing there with them. And that's interesting compared to Rise, where you had to pick just one. Is it going to be a palico, or is it going to be your palamute in multiplayer? Now we'll all have our own seikret, and we'll all have our own palico compared to that. They do go on to tell us that those who join the beta will unlock a special pendant for the full release. It's this little palico plushie that can hang from your weapon, or your seikret, whichever you like. So it's nice to basically have it confirmed that pendants are back, but now we can apply them to the seikret mount, not just weapons, as a choice. But yeah, that's been everything I've been able to see and learn from watching the trailer, the showcase, and checking the social medias. If there's anything I've missed or something you want to add to the topic, let us know in the comments. But it's very exciting that we'll all be playing Monster Hunter Wilds in this beta super soon. And with that, you can expect a lot of coverage from us, lots of videos talking about everything we learn. Until next time then, I've been Hollow, you've been you, thank you for watching, see you in the next one.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.